Morning, everybody. Welcome to Unity Spiritual Center. Glad you could join us on this last Sunday of June. What a beautiful day. No, that was a very good rock band for 1960. Oh, it's a beautiful day. Yeah, they were good. I'm going to get you centered here with us this morning a little bit. Ask you to sing along Sacred Love. You don't have to, but you can if you'd like, and we'd love to have you sing with us. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. Want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. Want to live in such a holy place. Such a holy place. You are blessed peace is all that you are. You are blessed peace, child. Blessed peace is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. Want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. Want to live in such a holy place. Such a holy place. You are deepest joy, deepest joy is all that you are. You are deepest joy is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. Want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place. Show the way, God, show the ways. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the ways. I want to live in such a holy place. Show the way, God, show the ways. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the ways. I want to live in such a holy place. Such a holy place. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. Sacred love is all that you are. Sacred love is all that you are. Alrighty then, that was a great start. And now I just have to figure out where I'm going from here. Alright, here it is. I found it. Alright, we're going to do Get Ready My Soul. You ready to get, is it Get Ready My Soul?
You got it, son.
Okay, good. So you can go up. Okay, put it all up. Forget body in. Get ready, my soul. My body in to the deepest kind of love, to the sweetest kind of love. So get ready, my soul. Everything I've ever done, everything I've ever seen, everything I've lost or won, everything I've ever dreamed has brought me here to the present moment here, to a new beginning here, when I'm seeing life so clearly. So get ready, my soul. My body in. Get ready, my soul. My body in to the deepest kind of love, to the sweetest kind of love. Get ready, my soul. 'Cause here I go, deeper, deeper, deeper than I've ever been before. Here I go, closer, closer, closer to my sacred source. Here I go, deeper, deeper, deeper than I've ever been before. Here I go, closer, closer, closer to my secret source. So get ready, my soul. I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm diving in to the deepest kind of love, to the sweetest kind of love. So get ready, my soul. So get ready, my soul.
Good morning. Welcome to Unity Spiritual Center. I'm Tara Weir, and I am your platform assistant today, supporting Dr. Gary. So I don't know if you have this experience, but sometimes in the morning I get like, oh, I gotta get there, and I gotta get there on time, and then as soon as we get in here and then the music starts, it's like I move from here back down to here. So I prefer it here. So our mission here at Unity Spiritual Center is transforming lives and inspiring people to make a positive difference in our world. So please, if you would, take a moment and silence your cell phones after you've checked in on social media so everyone knows how sweet and cool and loving we are. We want to begin our time by sharing our opening affirmation. I'll say it once, and then you can join me and we'll say it together. There is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God the Good. Together? There is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God the Good. This is Unity's founding principle. It's one presence, one power, and one life living through and as each one of us. This morning, we will hear from Dr. Gary on One Humanity, Many Stories, and the meditation will be actually led by Amber McKenzie. Now we are going to be continually blessed by our music team here. Yes, woo is right.
Yes.
Sean and Tani. Good morning.
I'm not going to stand. You good? We're going to sing. God, we're singing this morning.
Good morning. Good morning. My name's Linda Tweedy, and I have the announcements. Up top, Reverend David is offering a workshop on Wednesdays, starting July the 10th, that's just another week, from 10 to whenever, called Synchrodestiny, a sure sign you're on the right path. Sign up or don't sign up and just show up, it's just fine, because he'll be there. We are attempting a parking lot sale. I think Diane announced this all last Sunday. If anybody is actually interested in being a part of this, they really need to sign up on the sign-up sheet so she knows whether there's enough interest to actually have it happen. It got deterred from last month to this month, and if you want to know anything about it, talk to Diane. The main key here is you bring your own stuff, you price your own stuff, you sell your own stuff, and anything that doesn't sell, you take it home with you or drop it off at Goodwill or whatever. And the one question that's been coming up is, where does the money go? And the determination is up to you. You have a choice to keep part of your money and give part to the church, or give it all to the church. It's totally a personal decision on your part if you come in to be a part of this. So that is July the 20th from 7 a.m. to 12 noon. So if you want to be a part of it, sign up.
So I'm assuming tables and things might be provided, or we bring our own tables?
You could do either. We got a new thing in the Unity bookstore that Gary brought back from Unity Village. It's reusable bamboo straws with their own little cleaner in a little bag that says Unity on it. So, hey, cool stuff.
How much are they?
They're going to be $10 in the bookstore. Okay. And last but not least, I want to just a reminder that please don't throw away your handout, your bulletin. Just drop it in the basket at the back so we can reuse them from one week to the next. Okay, thanks.
So this next segment is a transformational stories update. I'm going to ask Diane Bisson to come up, and she's going to share her story. So we have this switched? Yes? Okay, it's coming. There we go. That's it.
Good morning. My story takes place over several years. When I was younger, I had scoliosis, a curvature of my spine, which was partly from a leg length discrepancy. So I had non-surgical treatment, wore a built-up shoe, which you could imagine how much I loved that as a teenager. Eventually, I was told that my spine was stable and I could just go back to wearing normal shoes, and that's what I did. So fast forward to my adult years, I ignored the signs that my body was saying something was wrong with my back. I had increased pain. I frequently could not manage my left leg, but I still continued to pretend it wasn't happening. One year in Bloomsday, the last 2 miles, I had to drag my leg because I couldn't lift it, but I still ignored it. You know, the power of pretending. In 1990, my body finally said, "This is it. You have got to pay attention to what's going on." That led me to finding an answer, and as anybody that's had back pain knows that you don't always get treated with the most respect from the medical community when you say you have back pain. I eventually left my primary care provider for that same reason, because he was so disrespectful of me and my problem. I finally connected with a physician who looked and listened and told me that at age 35, my spine was that of an 85-year-old. This led me to Cleveland, Ohio, to have surgery with a specialist who had developed a specialized pedicle plating system that was felt to be the best solution for my problem. I had a 10-hour surgery, which involved fusing and plating of several levels. They took out the curve in my spine, shortened my leg, and said, "You'll never know anything happened." Well, there were 2 problems from that. This plating system was not FDA approved. He had several lawsuits that he had lost at the time of my surgery, and should have told me that this was investigational and I should have signed off on an experimental treatment, which I did not. I was sent home with a life-threatening infection in my spine, which led to more surgeries, hospitalizations, 6 months of an open wound, requiring packing multiple times a day. If I had not already known what love was, Alan showed me that in every minute of every day. My antibiotics were given around the clock. So it meant one would finish and another would start. And so at midnight, he would get me started on my IV meds. I couldn't sleep in our bed because I was so infectious, so I slept on a platform. And then he'd set his alarm for 2 in the morning and come down and start my new ones with me. He never let me wing it. He just always did it. So that went on for 6 weeks like that until I could back off a bit on the meds. Then my medical bills exceeded my home health care coverage, so he became my nurse, packing my back for me. And he's never had a very strong stomach about things like that, so it was a challenge, but we got through it. My life became that of a chronic pain patient, trying to find a way to survive and deal with pain in a way that allowed me to still function at my job, parenting, and life. I was medicated in a way that attempted to manage my pain, yet be alert enough to work. I was not dealing very well with that and had an incident when driving home that was my wake-up call. I had a thought that if I turned my steering wheel and put my car into a bridge, I would no longer have to deal with the pain. So to me, that was God saying, stop and pay attention to this and get some help. I saw a pain specialist then, got on a better treatment for my pain, and went to pain management classes. I also had an amazing turning point when Thora and Weaver Hess were our ministers at that time, and they performed an intense healing ceremony with me. And I remember it being the first time in several years that I was able to release the tight hold I maintained over my body. Then one Sunday, when I kept telling myself I could not get up and come to church, I didn't have it in me, and this voice kept saying, you do and you will. And the lesson that day was about being in the dark hole of despair and climbing out with the toe and footholds. So I truly was meant to be here and hear that message. I began using a very structured meditation where I focused on each part of my body, relaxing it. At the end of each meditation, I would always say, let go and let God. I still use this meditation when I'm having times of increased pain, and I try to never say, why me, because the answer has to be, why not you? I recently left my job, retiring earlier than my goal had been. This has allowed me to have the time that I need to balance the changes in my life and the challenges. The work with the Q process was instrumental in allowing me to forgive the surgeon who contributed to my journey of pain. What I have discovered about myself through all of this is that I am strong. I have the tools needed to deal with this life challenge. I know that many of you have more challenging health issues that you struggle with every day. I am blessed to have the life that I have.
Perfect meditation song. So this is Karen Ducker's I Am So Blessed.
Those beautiful words. We are so blessed. So we take a moment now to connect to that deeper source of light within. Let us close our eyes and take into our loving prayers all those suffering with illness or difficulties in their lives. And let us take into our prayers this morning our dear friend, Regina Merritt, and her husband, Weldon. As we surround them in loving light, knowing Spirit is embracing them both in perfect and divine love. So now take some time to feel your own connection to the earth. Feel your deep connection in all that she gives and receives. Feel the support of your chair on your back and legs. Notice the rise and fall of your breath as the light of spirit moves in, around, and through you. And let us together now create a field of heart coherence. Allow your spirit-filled breath to enter your heart space, filling it with that divine love and light. As we bring into our awareness something or someone that we deeply love and appreciate. This may be a dear friend, a family member, a loved one who has passed on, a treasured pet or beloved child, a fond summertime memory. Allow this feeling of deep appreciation to fill our hearts with its warm embrace. Filling every cell of your body with gratitude, appreciation, and love. Allow this feeling to rise up and extend beyond our physical bodies. Imagine it overflowing from our hearts, filling this room and everyone in it, so that together we create a light field of coherence. A field so powerful, it extends beyond this time and place. Blanketing this room, this city, this country, and the entire planet with love and lighting up every heart along the way. Let us now take this image of universal oneness and connection as we go deeper into the silence. Blessed Spirit, we give thanks for this field in which we have collectively brought forth as it is carried forth into the world. And for this, we are so very, very grateful. And so it is. Amen.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so
Pardon me. All right. So, welcome back. So I've been gone for 3 weeks, and Jane and I went to our annual Unity Peoples Convention that was held in Overland Park, Kansas, nearby Unity Village. And our conference theme was One Humanity, Many Stories. And I just love that. I just love the theme. It was a convention that was quite different than what I had expected. Typically, the bar is so high for me to be impressed by by what's going on in the New Thought movement. And so my heart was open, basically, is my testimony to the experience. And I thought it would be a fitting title, especially knowing Diane's story. When Diane began to work with Jane to bring forth her story, I was anticipating what you would all experience, and it fit in so well with what I'd just come from, a whole week of listening to people's transformative stories and being a part of a collective holding of the space for our stories to connect us in ways that transcend, our BS, our belief system. And one of the big pieces about the convention, it was subtitled, if you can hear my story, you couldn't help but to love me. And I just feel that depth of opening, especially after Diane's sharing. I mean, we can't help but to love what has been her journey and what it inspires us to move towards, as we are also faced with the certainty that in our human experience we will be challenged, and yet our effort is to know that with God all things are possible, to know that we're not alone, to know that there is a movement of spirit and activity and intelligence, a love that carries us beyond any of our cares and concerns, but yet our struggle is to kind of be able to know the truth and to be in this world, but recognize that we're not of it. And so that's the challenge that we have. Now, in this convention where the focus was on stories and how stories connect us and how stories help us to transcend the circumstances of our life, it goes to not only recognizing that our transformative stories is what helps us awaken to a dimension of ourself that sometimes needs to be mirrored, sometimes need to be reflected back to us in someone else's life, someone else's struggle. And so as we, as a convention body, as a body of 300 plus Unity people coming together to kind of know that our efforts in terms of creating a world that works for everyone really begins with each of us in our own effort to transcend our own self-imposed limitations. And so our transformational stories become the context for mission-centric ministry, because when we recognize that as our stories become evidence that our principles and our effort and our humanity is truly one, is truly capable of transcending any difficulty, then we feel empowered, and that's important. The other side of stories is that we often have stories that separate us, that keep us separate or apart or alone or afraid. And it's when those stories become defining for us, that's when it becomes problematic. And so an interesting phenomenon when you get a group of Unity colleagues to come together, it's a different environment, because oftentimes when ministers come together, they let their guard down a little bit. They become themselves as opposed to feel like they have to show up a certain way. Of course, that's not my problem. What you see is what you get, as far as I'm concerned. But for my colleagues, it's not that way. They live in their own secrets feeling of inadequacy or not enough. And to be able to articulate that, to express that that's the story that they have, sometimes is what's needed. And from time to time, what's also needed for ourselves is to kind of become aware of the stories that are capturing our attention when we're not even conscious that that's what's going on. And so part of our effort in the spiritual journey is to awaken to the ways in which we've set ourselves separate and apart. Not because of any choice that we made consciously, but we've taken on beliefs about ourselves that aren't the truth of us. And so when we live in some belief that's not the truth of us, we manifest the very thing that we don't want to experience, because there's a part of us that is drawing into our life a needed reflection, that we're living in a sense of separation. And so our sense of separation creates insufficiency, creates obstacles, creates challenges in our life. As opposed to those challenges finding us, we have to recognize there's a part of our consciousness as it unfolds requires of us to have certain experiences so we can awaken from the dream of separation, or the story of not enough, or the story that we're not okay. So as we look at this, as we begin to unpack how we can become not only aware of how our life is unfolding in the context of our own transformational experience, but become aware of the stories that live inside of us that are the very obstacles to those transformational experiences. So I mentioned in a couple of talks ago, Jane and my next favorite book is What's in the Way is the Way by Mary O'Malley. And this will likely be a book study that she introduces in the fall. And Mary O'Malley has a very unique way of articulating the conundrum, the fact that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and yet our human experience conditions us to feel separate and apart. And so to be able to regain our connection to our sense of wholeness, to our sense of well-being and worth, to our sense of knowing that there's a higher intelligence, our higher self is available to us if we are able to simply train ourselves to stay connected, we have a total different quality of experience. But it's important for us to know that there are things that we have to do to change how we're being with what's happening, as opposed to trying to use all of our creativity and our creative effort to try to change what's happening out there because we're uncomfortable inside of us. So there's a principle that I'm wanting to share from this book. I want you to imagine with me a meadow, a beautiful meadow. And she describes what she calls the meadow of your well-being. Just imagine such a thing. The meadow of your well-being lives within you. That's the truth of you. That there's some aspect of ourself that right now is connected to a dimension of one's knowing of one's worth and value, that there's no sense of not enough that's possible. And so if you can imagine such a state, that's what Jesus called the abundant life that is given to us already. It's just that we're out of phase with it. We're out of phase with that dimension of life that already has as its intent to bring us into the full expression of who and what we've come here to be. But if that's not our experience, there's something that's happening that keeps us from operating out of this context, that we're connected to everybody, everyone, everything, everywhere, and every time. This is our natural state, but because we live under what she calls spells, spells are just simply beliefs that we're not okay, that we're not enough, because we live as if that's the truth of us. There is a veil, there is something that's obscured in our capacity to know, or to be in the feeling a connection to the meadow of our well-being. And so if you could imagine yourself in this meadow, and then all of a sudden recognize that it becomes something that you can no longer sense because we're living in this kind of clouds of our stories of struggle. And so just imagine, if you will, having the greatest good in your life obscured or not accessible or invisible to you because there's so many stories in your head about why it's not possible for you or for me to have what it is that we ultimately we're yearning for in our life. Can you relate to such a thing? That we live in this illusion of how our life is because of the stories that happen. And so part of the waking up process is to begin to recognize the difference between the storyteller and the person who's listening to the story in our head. Okay, so there's two different dynamics. There's the story that goes on in our head that's told by, as if it's narrated by some part of us. But that's not the truth of us. The part of us that is the truth of us is the person who's listening to the story as if that's who we are, as if that's the truth of us. And if you pay attention to the stories that are running in your head, you will see that they are always portraying your life as if it's against you in some fashion. And whenever you feel a sense of not enough, or a sense that your presence doesn't matter, or that you don't measure up, you're living as if there is this belief that there's something wrong. And what if it's just the cloud, or just the spell, or just the conditioning, or the belief system? What if that is the problem as opposed to what's really happening in our life experience? And so she has a methodology for helping us become conscious of the stories that are in our head that are inadvertently control our well-being when we're not conscious. And so part of the challenge is becoming conscious in the moment that you're listening to the storyteller in your head. Another word for the storyteller is your ego. And as you begin to pay attention to what's going on in your head, stories fall into two different categories: stories about the past or stories about the future. And that's a way to wake up. So in the moment, as you find yourself in some form of dis-ease with what you are having, then be in the question: am I experiencing a story from my past? Or am I experiencing something I'm projecting about the future? So that you can begin to differentiate what you're having as the story and the storyteller that's talking to you, as if this is important for you to take into consideration. So an example of this is looking, for instance, for us, Jay and I are in the process of moving towards relocating and developing our property in Kettle Falls. And so in the process of moving to Kettle Falls eventually, we have to have a home, and we have to have electricity brought to the property. We have all these things that have to happen in order for that condition to fulfill itself, where we have someplace to live when we retire. And so always when you're dealing with situations in the world where you have to borrow money or go to make your well-being somehow dependent upon what's happening out there, you worry about things. And so the story that Jane and I constantly have to struggle with is whether or not we can have enough, if we have enough. Have you ever been in the story of your own sense of not enough before? And then living in that as if that's the truth of you, not feeling very empowered when you recognize you're going to have a credit rating, or you're going to have a certain income or borrowing capacity. All these things, we mortgage our well-being on conditions outside of oneself. And so operating under the spell of not enough, then every effort to try to acquire something that is necessary for the next step of one's unfolding then causes one to look outside of oneself for evidence of one's worth. And so now you can see what the problem is. The problem is that the issue is not whether or not we have enough. The issue is that we're believing that we are not enough in the presence of our desire to move something forward. And so the next step is to notice how we confuse ourselves with the storyteller. You know, when I listen to that part of me that says, you can't afford this, you can't do that because this isn't happening, I take that in as if someone's telling me how my life really is, as opposed to, well, why are you saying this? This is not true. To actually question the storyteller inside of you, you have my permission to do that from now on. To know that you can know that the story that's being told in your head is not the truth. It's just the story that you've been conditioned to use as evidence of your inadequacy, or as evidence that you're a disappointment. The story is simply the artifact of the conditioned aspect of our being as opposed to the truth of who we are. Then finally she says, you know, to relate to your story, not from your story. So I can relate to my story of not enough, but if I relate from my story of not enough, that's the problem. And so I have to be able to be with my story of not enough and recognizing that's not the truth of me. I'm under the spell of this belief that I am not enough. Therefore, my effort to try to acquire something that's necessary and needed becomes a struggle. And I become committed to having my life be a struggle as opposed to committed to bearing witness that can come to me effortlessly. So, I wanted to share a quote from one of my mentors and teachers, from Dr. Joe. He says, the quantum field, I got to read it from up here, responds not to what we want, it responds to who we are being. And so let us just say that the dimension of ourself, the quantum dimension of ourself, let's call it the field, or our higher self, the dimension of ourself that has the capacity to bring forth what is necessary and good, is actualized in the context of who we are being with what we're having. And so if who we are being with what we're having is not enough, then what we create is insufficiency. Jesus said it this way, to him who has, more shall be given. To him who has not, even that which he has shall be taken away. And the principle is that whenever we be with what we're having, out of some belief that's not the truth of us, what gets created is something that is in the way of our seeing the meadow of our well-being. And so to kind of step out of this conundrum of really focusing on not, see, our conditioning is, our story is about what we're having. That's the problem. We never go to, who am I being that is helping to cause this to be a mirror unto me? And when we begin to shift to who am I being with what I'm having right now, we will see that when we're needing to be right, we're being our inadequacy. When we're having to have things a certain way, we're being our sense we don't measure up. And we begin to understand the relationship with how our life looks and feels and how we're being. Because how we're being conditions the field to collapse into the context that is the mental equivalent. If I'm being a disappointment, I'm going to have experiences where people are going to help me understand how I fell short, you see. And so for me, I think of it this way. This is what I tell my clients. Most of my clients are dealing with not enough. In other words, the church clients I'm working with. And so I share with ministry leaders that you cannot try to get more in the presence of your not enough. I mean, just think about that for a moment. How many of us, in the presence of our own sense of not enough, try to get more of what's missing and find that that doesn't work? And yet that becomes the default way of being with all of us. But what if, instead of getting more, the effort was to be more? Now, just try that on just for a moment. What does it mean when you're dealing with not enough to be more with it? That's the hard part, because you see, our mind doesn't know how to do that. Our mind doesn't know how to be more with not enough. And so we have to shift into the part of us where stories don't happen, the part of us where judgment doesn't happen, the part of us where not enough doesn't arise, the part of us where a sense of well-being and worth is our standard context for how we're having our life. Where is that part of us? If it's not in our head, where is it? It's in our heart. Right, because so what does it mean from the context of the heart to be more? That's all the heart knows how to do. Think about it. What does it mean for the heart to be more in the presence of not enough? What would the heart want us to know about how to be with what we're having? Well, we can run through some possible lists of things. I know, Jan and I, for us, when we were dealing with our struggle of managing, doing what we had to do in order to, get the loan or get the credit approved or whatever, it's always about needing to be more worthy. That when you shift into being more worthy and begin to explore what must that be like to feel absolutely worthy of this good that I'm seeking to welcome into my life. How would it feel to be in this experience of welcoming something, knowing that it is not about whether or not I deserve this. I know my worth. And what does it mean to be in the situation of what the world is asking us to do in terms of what happens when, I'm sorry, we can't give you this loan because, this is insufficient or this is not right. And so we have to, in that moment, be in greater integrity with respect to our personal finances. We have to be in the question, how do we understand more about what it is that we have to be willing and able to do if we're to be in alignment with this intent, to be the avenue through which something moves through us, as opposed to us trying to struggle to acquire something outside of us. So those examples I've used in the context of our effort to, work this process of moving towards Kettle Falls. There's a lot more to share about that, but that's just I'm just beginning to unfold a little story, because what I'm wanting to share is that when we shift out of being as opposed to getting or having as our way of trying to manage what's missing in our life, our mind doesn't know how to do that. And so when we give up trying to address whatever is our issue that has to be fixed in the context of this is what our mind wants to do. It wants to fix this. It wants to change this. It wants to have this different. It wants to predict or control this. When we abandon that and begin to rest our awareness in cultivating a connection to that meadow of our own well-being that transcends any outer condition and really connect to the truth of who we are, and then open to that connection in the question, how do I need to be with this that I'm having right now that actualizes that dimension of myself that is connected to the field of infinite possibilities where all things are working together for a greater good. Finally, I just end with these words from Mary O'Malley that I like. Life is set up to bring up what has been bound up so it can open up to be freed up so you can show up for life. All right. God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Gary. I'm sure we all have a little story or a thought that came up, the example that probably resonates with us. So I'm grateful to be a part of a community that's going to process this together and be on a journey together. And here at Unity, Unity stands for peace in the presence of conflict, for love in the presence of hatred, for forgiveness in the presence of injury. Unity honors the many names for God, the many paths to God, for we know that there is only one power, one presence, and one life. So, whoever you are and wherever you are on your journey of transformation, you are welcome here. We would especially like to welcome anyone who is here for the first time. Are there anybody, if you're willing to show us here and with a raise of your hand, those are here for the first time? Looks like we all go way back. So if you happen to have not gotten a name tag made yet, please go into this center here to the left and jot your name down. Unless you want a temporary one, there's temporary ones there too, so you can join us in that way. We also want to welcome our online viewers. So I was wondering if Jane might be watching. Maybe. Hi, Reverend Jane, if you are.
She was watching when David was doing the talk, and she did notice what you said online.
Uh-oh. Well, we thank anybody who is watching online, and we're grateful for this community for making that possible to be able to watch from wherever we are, whenever we're away. So now is the time to welcome and greet each other with a handshake or a hug or a high five or a wave or a namaste, whatever you're comfortable with, and we will begin with our welcome song.
All right, if you can stand, that'd be great. I'd love to have you join us here as we sing the gathering song. We are gathering song, welcoming the harvest, welcoming the rose of spirit wide. We are walking tonight, starting out together on a journey through the miracles inside. We are gathering song, welcoming the harvest, welcoming the rose of spirit wide. We are walking tonight, starting out together on a journey through the miracles inside. Well, we are gathering in song, welcoming the harvest, opening the doors in the wide. We are walking tonight, starting out together, journey through the miracles inside.
We are gathering in song, welcoming the harvest.
We're opening the doors of spirit wide. We're walking tonight, we're on a journey through the miracles inside.
Yeehaw! All right. All of us go way back together. You'll see each other in the fellowship hall. Please have a seat. That was for you, Dr. Gary. Well, now is our time to celebrate the abundance together as we share our tithes and our love offerings. So I invite you to hold your offering in your hand, and if you're automatically giving, hold your offering in your heart. And if you're joining us online, you can use the donate tab that's on our website. So we take this moment now to sink into our hearts and bring forth that feeling of gratitude and generosity that lives deep inside of us. So let's say together our offering blessing. I know that my giving blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I give and receive. I give thanks for the abundance that is mine to share.
That was me thinking ahead.
It's all good.
It's all good. This song is called Light of My Soul. I wrote this song back in 2015 in a collection of songs from an album called Light of My Soul. And this is for Diane. And for any of you that have just that person in your life, you'll know it. There have been some changes I'm hoping you would see. There are little differences I hope you see in me. There has been some love and lost, but love is always found by pulling up your bootstraps and keeping both feet on the ground. Loving you, holding you is what I'm best at giving. Loving you and wanting you has made my life worth living. You are the best part of my life. You're by my side, you're with me wherever I go. You are the gentle sound from an angel's wings. You are the light of my soul. I hope you feel the love I see. It is so real, it touches me. You are the best part of my life. You're by my side, you're with me wherever I go. You are the gentle sound from the angel's wings. You are the light of my soul. You are the best part of my life. You're by my side, you're with me wherever I go. You are the gentle sound of wind from the angel's wings. You are the light of my soul.
Man, are we blessed or what? Whew. Wow. On so many ways, we are so blessed in this community. So we give thanks for these gifts and for those that have given them as we send them forth to bless our beautiful world. And so it is. Amen. So our chaplains today are Tim, He ain't scared. He can handle it. Line up, take a number. It's all good. We've got plenty of time. So, and who has been holding the service in presence? Oh, Mary. I'm sorry, I couldn't see you there. Thank you, Mary Teresa, for holding our service, like you do in prayer. So, if you have anything that is heavy on your heart, and Gary, are you available too? Excellent. Come on down. And Julian is also available. Check it out. We have an abundance. We manifest what we need. Absolutely.
We have a Hoop Fest team right here.
We do. 3-on-3. Good point. So one of these gentlemen will be, or all of these gentlemen are available for our heavy heart or for a celebration, however you choose. They will not give advice. They will just hold the highest and best good for you and all involved. So please avail yourselves to one of them after the service. Thank you, all three of you. You can also fill out a prayer request form that you'll find in the seat pocket in front of you, and you can put it in a prayer box. There's one here and there's one in the atrium. And the prayer team will pray with you for 7 days, and then the prayers will be sent on to Silent Unity, and that will be prayed over for 30 days, so very powerful. And if you know someone who is in the hospital and has requested a visit from one of our chaplains, please use the form that's in that seat pocket as well and fill that out, and you can put it in one of the prayer boxes too. So now it's time for the next generation. Are they in the hallway yet? Oh, here they are. So if you will help us welcome the children.
We are singing for this love is our light. We are singing for this love is our light. We are singing for this love is our light. We are singing for this love is our light. We are singing. Oh, we are singing for this love is our light. We are singing. Oh, we are singing for this love is our light. We are singing for this joy is our light. We are singing for this joy is our light. We are singing for this joy is our light. We are singing for this joy is our light. We are singing, let's hear it. Oh, we are singing for this joy is our light. We are singing. Oh, we are singing for this joy is our light. Let's sing it more. We are singing for this love is our light. We are singing for this love is our light. We are singing for this love is our light. We are singing for this love is our light. We are singing now. Oh, we are singing for this love is our light. We are singing. Oh, we are singing for this love is our light.
We are singing for this love is our life. So we are so grateful for our young people, each one a beautiful expression of love. So if you would, let's take a moment and bless our children and those in the youth ministry service. Be the love you are. Sing the song you hear. Share your joy of life with people far and near. And now for ourselves. Be the love we are. Sing the song we hear. Share our joy of life with people far and near. Now, if you'll go back with the folks you came with. Okay, now if you're able, please stand and join together for our closing prayer, followed by the peace song. The light of God surrounds us.
I am the light of God, the love